Wakey, wakey. Hello, good morning, and many thanks indeed for joining us here on Morning Prime on this day of 16th or 17th of August 2023. It is Thursday. Every Thursday, have Sokoni coming your way. And I'm glad that you've chosen KTN News Channel to inform you today. Of course, it's all about matters state of economy today. And I'm glad that I already have my panelists here with me. I'm joined this morning by Dr. Shemo Chodo, who's the chair of the Kenya Diaspora Alliance. Also, we have with us Engineer Patrick Obath, who is the chair of KEPS Foundation. We're joined also by Professor Gituro Wanaina, who is, of course, a professor at the School of Business, University of Nairobi, and the chair of Nairobi Securities Exchange. This is Kiprono Kitoni. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us today.
Excellent morning.
All right, before we even hear from you, we want just to see what is fresh off the press this morning. Beginning with the bold paper, which is the Standard. Ruto throws Mandago underbus over scam, is what is hogging the front page of the Standard today. No sacred cows. A tough talking president sends a twin warning to culprits of botched 1.1 billion shillings Finland program and the corrupt who misuse public resources, that they will face the music. You have this story on page 2 and 6 of the Standard today. And we have that eye-popping figure, 1.1 billion shillings. That is the amount Jackson Mandago and 3 county officials are accused of conspiring to steal from KCB Bank Eldoret between March the 1st, 2021 and September the 12th, 2021. 180 witnesses lined up by the DPP to testify against the 4 suspects in the Finland education scandal. And you have 11. The charges that Mandago, Joseph Maritim, Mesha Chrono, and Joshua Lele face. Here are their faces, Joseph Maritim and Mesha Chrono there. If we just expand on that so that you can see. And Joshua Lele, 56.5 million shillings, the amount Maritim, Rono and Lele are accused of stealing from a KCB Bank Eldoret branch between June 2021 and September 12th, 2022. And you can see he was being arrested there yesterday. Uasin Gishu Senator Jackson Mandago can be seen escorted here to Nakuru Central Police Station last evening. He's expected to be charged today, and you can follow the story inside the Standard. Devolution, U.S. envoy wows with investment speech or pitch there. And you can see here Ambassador Meg Whitman, who wows delegates to the 10th Devolution Conference with her presentation, highlighting the U.S.-Kenya trade opportunities and how counties can benefit. Also, DP leads talks onslaught amid Mount Kenya fears, while some leaders have openly expressed their reservations on Azimio Kenya Kwanza talks. Others silently fear for the region's interest. You have this story on page 4 of the Standard. Man loses 2.3 million shillings property in tussle over child upkeep. That is a story that you want to follow on page 3 of the Standard this morning. And on the teaser there, how DNA from hair shaver gave away terrorists. There's a special report there on page 12 and 13 of the Standard. And also today, pain of tumbling shilling. You can see the rest of the story there on page 20 of the business pages there of the Standard. Every Thursday also you have the real estate coming in handy for you. And you can get all the wiser as far as real estate is concerned. It's England versus Spain in World Cup final, and that is the women World Cup final. You can follow the story on page 40 of the Standard today. All right, this is the editorial cartoon that also is in the Star. Scholarship Weka kwa lungs. Of course, you can remember his rhetoric regarding the lungs and the BBI. Don't put these things into your hearts, right? This is what has been drawn there by Ozone in the Star. Scholarship Weka kwa lungs. And everyone has been crying regarding this. Also, the president spoke about it yesterday. We'll run you about the story. But let me just rush now to the Daily Nation for you to see what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. How cash was moved is what was, or is a splash today. Probe exposes money trail. Finland airlift saga bites Mandago. This is the highest. Nation obtains documents showing how officials withdrew 203 million shillings for personal use from bank accounts into which parents had paid fees for their children to study in Finland and Canada under a program run by Uasin Gishu County during the reign of Jackson Mandago. You have the story on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation, 1.1 billion shillings amount state prosecutors allege the suspects conspired to steal from the overseas study program. And also Ruto warning on looting of public funds as the Devolution conference marking the 10th anniversary of counties opened yesterday in Eldoret. President Ruto challenged governors to stop wastage of public resources, vowing it will be no longer be business as usual and the corrupt will be punished. The story is on page 4, 5, 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation this morning. You can see insert there of the president addressing the conference yesterday. Opposition leader Raila Odinga is the guest speaker today on the second day of the Devolution conference, where participants drawn from the public and private sector as well as development agencies are discussing transformation from the grassroots and how county governments can drive the economic renaissance. You can follow the story, as I mentioned, on page 4, 5 and 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Star. And this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Star this morning. Ghost of Finland scam returns to haunt Mandago. That is what we have on the front page of the Star. If at all we can beam it, it will be nice. And it says DPP approves charges against Senator and 3 other former county officials. And this story is on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. And Ruto vows to crack the whip on graft in counties. We shall be looking at this also much later. I'll run you by the dailies as we continue with the conversation with our panelist here. Also, if you may just pick up a copy of the People Daily. The publication is all about mixed fortunes for Uhuru's CSs, and we shall look at that much later in the course of the program. But let me just hear from our panelist, and just to get introductory remarks from them as well. Beginning with you, Chair. It's been a while since you darkened our door, as they say.
Thank you very much, Debal. It's really wonderful to be back here. I have been on the road, as I've been to you regularly and informing you. I've been traveling quite a bit in the recent past. I've just come back from a trip with other stakeholders in the financial, in the capital markets to India, and I will be sharing some information there. But let me start by really commending His Excellency the President for the very powerful messaging he gave at yesterday's Devolution conference. And obviously, you know, the message that we received from Ambassador Meg Whitman of the United States, I think those are really set the agenda for, you know, for the remainderment of this year. And I think that there is a lot to be thankful for. There's certainly a lot of work that's going on, and I think kudos to the leadership, and I do believe that there is enough going on for this economy to start to turn the trajectory.
Thank you. All right, Patrick Kubath, good morning.
Good morning. I think I'll follow on with what Keeper said about the powerful messaging yesterday. But for me, I think a little bit further on that, action is a key thing. The messaging is great and everything else, but what we need is action. There's a lot of things that have been said. There are a combination of things that have been said before,
yes.
But what we really need is things to happen. And I'll talk about Ambassador Meg Whitman. She talks all about, you know, certainty about the way the country is run, and that is a key thing.
Especially on the taxes. Right? Predictability.
Taxes is one, but it's just the general policy area,
yes,
right? And regulations and whatever it is. That whole area we really need to come to terms as to how we can make that something that a businessman can include that in their business plan, right? And know that if I include this particular provisions and everything else, I'll be able to do my business, get my returns, and if there are any changes, there has to be a time period. So if you're going to change taxes, put them in this year and say within 2 years these taxes are going to kick in, right? Unless there's an emergency in the country. But that way you get people to really now believe that there's order in the country. So for me, it is action. How do we actually make things happen after the great statements that were made by the president and the ambassador?
All right, let's hear from Professor Gituro Onaina.
Yeah, I'll pick from him. I think it's to make sure that things happen. You know, weekend we enjoy the mchere and nyama, you know. That happened. And that happened.
Politically speaking.
Politically speaking, and we were promised. So that worked out. And I was happy about that. But more strongly, Whitman, she came very clearly, and I think Patrick's echoing that. More action. Once upon a time, somebody told the meaning of NATO. No action, talk only. So, the North Atlantic means...
The NATO.
Yes, no action, talk only. The president comes very strongly. There are a lot of issues to do with, particularly even the scholarship in the backyard, as yesterday. But let's see the action more. And that's what probably we are looking for. Good to have the talk, good to have the rhetoric, good to promise, but those promises must turn into... I've said before, hope is important, but hope is never a strategy, will never be.
Hope is never a strategy.
Yes, there must be something behind it.
All right, Dr. Shemachodo, good morning.
Good morning. But allow me to record condolence to the family of James Osogo, a former Minister of Education, did fantastic work. We are in a stage where the issue of inclusion is key. And I remember those early days, although a young boy, maybe a child, Mzee Kenyatta used to say, what are these guys complaining about? I've given them ministers with Otiende or Nyonka or Sogo. At that time, none of those was from the lake. So hopefully as we discuss inclusion, it will be genuine inclusion. In terms of what happened in LD, I think hats off both to Mr. President as well as Madam Ambassador Meg. I think she did work more than our institutions that are meant to promote Kenya, brand Kenya and so on, have ever done. So kudos to her. I'm hoping that the things she talked about and the President also reiterated, governance, ensuring things are done properly, is upheld. But one may say that some action was seen with their arrest of Honorable Senator. So there is some action. I'm hoping that justice will prevail at the end of the day.
Right, and that action is what we want also to doggedly pursue as well. And this is where we want to begin our story, where embattled Uasin Gishu Senator Jackson Mandago spent the night at Nakuru Central Police Station in connection with the Finland education airlift saga. Mandago was detained last evening after he presented himself at the Rift Valley Regional DCI headquarters in Nakuru. This followed an order by the Nakuru Magistrates Court, which issued a warrant of arrest against the immediate former Uasin Gishu governor. The warrant of arrest have also been issued against 3 other individuals, and Ken Kachohi, that is Ken Kachohi, I should say, start us off.
Uasin Gishu Senator Jackson Mandago will tonight be a guest of the state, detained at the Nakuru Central Police Station. Mandago was arrested Tuesday evening after he presented himself at the Rift Valley Regional DCI headquarters in Nakuru. The former governor and 4 others who served under his administration are facing 11 counts related to the botched Finland and Canada overseas education program worth 1.1 billion shillings. Mandago and his co-accused were expected to present themselves at the Nakuru law courts to answer to various charges but failed to turn up. Early morning, Rift Valley Regional Coordinator for the Directorate of Public Prosecutions, Hassan Abdi, submitted to the court that Mandago, Mesha Krono, Joshua Lelei were unreachable on their phones and unavailable at their known residences. The fourth accused person, identified as Joseph Kipkemboi, is said to have traveled to Canada. The charge sheet for the 4 has 11 counts, which include conspiracy to commit felony, stealing money deposited in an account registered in the name of Uasin Gishu Overseas Education Trust, abuse of office, and forgery of documents with the intent to defraud the trust. Nakuru Senior Principal Magistrate Peter Ndege issued warrants of arrest against the 4 suspects and the details made public by the National Police Service. Mandago, however, refuted claims that he had gone into hiding and that he was ready to present himself at any location he may be directed. For 6 hours, the police maintained tight security outside the Nakuru law courts, ready to pounce on any of the suspects after details emerged that they were on their way here. Mandago, however, used alternative routes and arrived at the regional DCI headquarters at 4 p.m. accompanied by his lawyers, who were momentarily locked out. After an hour of interrogation, Mandago emerged from the offices and was bundled into a waiting police car which sped to Nakuru Central Police Station, where he will spend the night. The former governor is said to be arraigned at the Nakuru law courts Wednesday morning, even as the police intensify the search for his co-accused persons. Ken Gashohe, KTN News, Nakuru County.
And President William Ruto has, for the first time, spoken about the Finland airlift program when he addressed resident, of Eldoret, Uasin Gishu County. The president told people who may have taken or misappropriated the funds to refund to the parents and students or face the music. Emmanuel Toh has more. In the meantime, still there, the much-awaited Governors' Conference officially kicked off with President William Ruto citing corruption and poor governance as issues that have hindered, the achievement of the benefits of devolution. Ruto said, despite gains and other opportunities granted by devolution, incompetence and outright theft of public resources, as well as wastage, were negatively affecting devolution. Elvis Koske reports.
The head of state was the chief guest during this year's Governors' Conference, being held in Eldoret in the county of Uasin Gishu. The forum is aimed at looking at gains and weaknesses of devolution 10 years after its introduction. It was here that President William Ruto cited major weaknesses hampering realization of fruits of devolution, top being corruption.
We shall treat corruption at all levels of government as a high-priority law enforcement issue requiring expeditious and decisive response. Regardless of position, office or status, any person implicated in the loss of public funds, whether in the national or devolved government, must encounter the punitive consequences of their action in full.
If the 2010 Constitution is the crown for the country, then devolution is the critical jewel in that crown.
Transformative service delivery as devolved entities requires proactive performance management underpinned by transparency, which propels us towards effective governance.
He said his administration is committed to ending corruption and said the fight will cut across counties, including Uasin Gishu County. The conference is set to continue the whole week.
I expect the agencies concerned to move with speed and attend to the many cases of corruption that are festering in many counties, including Uasin Gishu County.
On behalf of my colleagues, our sincere gratitudes for the end-of-year disbursements, which were on time for the first time in 10 years. Your Excellency, also, for the first time in 10 years, we got our July disbursements for this financial year that we've started 2023-2024 on time.
89 billion that counties have generated since their establishments. This, by all means, demonstrates significant commitment on the part of the national government to cascade resources and development to the grassroots for the benefit of Kenyans.
Remaining functions that are still being discharged by national government and transfer them to the counties. I am very happy that between the national government and the committee that is responsible for that job and the other stakeholders, we have finally agreed on the functions that should be transferred. An analysis is going on the funding that will accompany the transfer of those functions. And I am told that in the next 60 days, we should be able to transfer all the remaining functions to our counties.
Elvis Kosgei, KT News, Uasin Gishu County.
And still in Uasin Gishu County, President William Ruto has, for the first time, spoken about the Finland airlift program when he addressed residents of Eldoret, Uasin Gishu County. The president told people who may have taken or misappropriated the funds to refund the funds to the parents and students or face the music.
While responding to calls from the disgruntled constituents of his backyard in Eldoret town, Uasin Gishu County, President William Ruto, for the first time ever, delved into the Finland Education Airlift program saga, which has become a thorn in the flesh for the parents, students, as well as leaders in the county. President Ruto promising to bring to book the perpetrators of the scandal through graft agencies.
Kama kuna mtu alikula hiyo pesa, ajipange kulipa mapema ama ataingia mtabani. Sindio? Hakuna maneno ya kubembelezana. Pesa ya ng'ombe ya mtu ama aliuza shamba, lazima arudishiwe pesa yake. Kwanza wanatuletea aibu. Sindio? These people are ni watu bure kabisa.
The head of state also pledged to assist the affected students.
Nitaona vile tutaweza kuwasaidia hawa watoto kwa sababu ni watoto wetu na ni watoto hawana hatia na ni watoto innocent. Sindio? So tutawapanga vile tunaweza kuwapatia scholarship ya nyumbani hapa waende wasome ndio tuweze kuendelea na mambo yao. Lakini sio kumaanisha ya kwamba wale waliiba pesa watahepa. Hawawezi. Hawawezi. Hapana.
Parents, guardians and students affected by the scandal had organized demonstrations in the county to disrupt the ongoing Devolution conference, but they called it off the last minute.
Tunataka pesa zetu tutoe watoto wasome, tusiendelee kukufa, tumekufa kama tuko hai.
Na ukweli ni kwamba pesa tulilipa kwenyu. We don't know any other source. We know only you people. So you constantly saying ati hamna pesa kwa account. Pesa ilienda wapi?
Former Uasin Gishu Governor Jackson Mandago has been mentioned in the saga. The Director of Public Prosecution has also added 3 names: Joseph Maritim, the immediate former Chief Office of the Youth and Sports, Meshach Rono, the Deputy Director of the County Education Revolving Fund and Trustee, and Joshua Lelei as people of interest in the case.
With time, we shall be vindicated. Tell me of any other county that has 277 students in Finland.
In May 2021, the Uasin Gishu County government partnered with the Tampere University in Finland in a program that saw students from the county airlifted to study in the country. The first batch of learners left the country in September 2021, 3 months after the deal was signed. However, a year later, the ship ran into turbulent waters and has not recovered since then, with delays in the disbursement of funds by the county, which had promised full scholarships for the learners, failing to land in their accounts. Emmanuel Tor, KT News.
Development partners have often been critical of Kenya on several issues. Well, the opening of the Devolution conference saw the United States commend the country for various achievements. And as Rita Tinina reports, U.S. Ambassador to Kenya, Meg Whitman, made a case for increased investment in Kenya.
For control of corruption.
It is not often that the president gives a standing ovation at the opening of the Devolution conference. U.S. Ambassador to Kenya, Meg Whitman, got not 1 but 2, led by William Ruto. It was the presentation by the U.S. ambassador and the chair of the Devolution donor group, Ambassador Ole Tonke, painting the picture of Kenya as a country in the front line in various sectors.
Kenya is the most stable democracy in Africa. Kenya is the gateway to the East African market of almost 500 million consumers. Kenya is the regional logistics hub. Kenya is the leading regional financial hub. And Kenya, with its Silicon Savannah and super smart engineers, is the region's ICT hub.
We have seen huge investments in the health sector, in water, agriculture, roads, etc.
To the U.S. ambassador, Kenya is on the right track.
Adjusted for GDP, Kenya receives significantly more venture capital than anywhere else on the continent, generating roughly triple the venture capital to GDP ratios of Nigeria Egypt, and South Africa.
The development partners made a case for increased investments in Kenya.
The United States and Kenya are open for business. And to quote President Ruto, Kenya means business. So we have work to do. We need to roll up our sleeves and deliver the results.
But the recognition of the country came with concerns by the U.S. ambassador.
Without a doubt, corruption is a critical issue and one that must be addressed for Kenya to reach its full potential in all areas of development.
We must ensure that corruption does not happen at county level. That has always been the argument against devolution, that this will just devolve corruption.
The sentiments by development partners may be a pat on the back for the country in development efforts. And for the next 2 days, participants here will be taking stock of the country's 10-year devolution journey. Rita Chinina, KTN News.
And what will we do without our daily tonic of a cartoonist, where we have Victor Ndolo, who has aptly captured Ambassador Meg Whitman's sentiments very well. And you can see how really coming from this particular office, everyone there is jutting out, or maybe jutting their heads out to try and, or closing in. He's marketing Kenya. Yeah, actually, he's closing in on that particular door. And you can see this is, the briefcase is Ambassador Meg Whitman Marketing Services. Right, and of course,
but there's a part where he's locking some people with sufurias. You can see the key.
Yeah, there's the sufuria people that are jutting out their heads there to come out. Yeah, so this was not really featuring during the Devolution conference, or as it continues as well. But when we have such good sentiments coming from the ambassador, I think we expect reactions from the Nairobi Security Exchange today. Good sentiments, of course.
Yes. Let me just narrow down to a few of the these matters that were discussed in yesterday's Devolution conference. One of them, of course, we heard the chairman of the Council of Governors, Governor Waiguru, say that for the first time, the counties have been paid on time in July. Now, what, I mean, and just to borrow from the sentiments of Patrick Obath and Professor Wainaina, you see, action is what we want to see. And my hope for the small and medium-sized enterprises in the counties is that they too will be paid on time. I have an enterprise that does business in the counties, and one of the biggest challenges has been to receive funding on the business that you get from county governments on time.
Yeah.
So they have been paid on time, and my message to the Council of Governors is that they too borrow a queue and pay their suppliers on time. Yeah, the second thing that we has, that has been discussed is, and again, like I mentioned to you, Debal, I have just come back from India a few weeks ago. You see, if we are going to create a robust and viable small and medium-sized enterprise, we need to have a predictable environment for them. We need them to have access to capital. We need to have policies that will actually entrench small and medium-sized enterprises. If we look at the mortality rate of SMEs in Kenya today, it's still very high. Many companies do not go into their second year. The tax regime, the policy regime, the licensing regime is still very, very heavy. And, seeing the leadership that President Ruto has provided and the commitment that he has on the economy, I would like to urge the government to start to really look at some of these aspects in order for these enterprises to scale. Now, with regard specifically to industry, Deban, I mean, and this is something that we saw in India. Industry can only be created on patient funds. We need to have long-term patient funds in order for us to industrialize, in order for us to have value addition in agriculture that has been talked about many times, and in order for us to create enterprises that can not only serve Kenya, but Africa and the rest of the world.
Right, thank you. Patrick Obath.
Yeah, I agree. The whole, the building of this nation will rely on a pipeline that starts with the small, micro, small, and then into medium and large enterprises. But at the same time, we also need to be deliberate around how those opportunities are created at the county level. Because if we get a very nice blanket of functioning enterprises at the county level, out of those will arise the phoenix, as it's called. And recently, they talked about having these industrial parks across all the counties. Now, it's great to have those industrial parks, but for what reason? what are they targeting? Do we have within the counties a targeted way of populating those industrial parks, right? And industrial parks presumes that you already have material that can actually be produced, can be converted, aggregated, or whatever the case may be in those industrial parks. So we see all these things being talked about, but the question is, are they actually going to be properly managed at the county level, right? With the money now going in, as you said, you know, end of last year, beginning of this financial year for the government, it is important that that money is properly deployed. We have had money going into the counties in the past, but the kind of horror stories you hear about how that money is deployed is what has been failing us as a country. They've increased employment in the counties. So you've just added to the wage bill because you've got money that is available. The whole issue of the hospitals and everything else, and you know, you had this managed equipment scheme and everything else, which was a great idea, but the implementation of it was actually very, very, very badly done. It was, you know, it was pushed down rather than sort of having that dialogue about how it's going to work and everything else. So, whilst a lot has happened positively, and we're going forward, there's a lot that still needs to be done in terms of execution. I'm going to keep talking about this when we talk about counties. Execution, right? We are coming on the way up to the stairs with Prof. We are talking about the 40-page pullout that there was in the newspaper
48
yesterday.
48 pages to be exact.
48 pages, yeah? In the pullout in the newspapers yesterday about what the countries have achieved and everything else. And I look at that and I said, I haven't seen this, I haven't seen this, I haven't seen this. They are all, a lot of them, you pick up a picture and then you build a whole story around it. And if you go down and you begin to say, okay, this was done in this point, but where is it spread across the county? It isn't. So you've got all these little things that are happening, and they're then being hyped up as being development in the counties. I think we really need to be serious around how we deploy the funds that are coming out from the government into the counties.
Right. Let's hear from Professor Kituru Wanaina, especially on the issue of corruption, because I think that continues to be a menace. But let me just hear from you first of all before we gravitate there.
Yeah. There are no two ways about corruption if you want to read it to get it. Go like a surgery, you know. You have a cancer, chop it off. It's a breast or whatever. That's my strongest view about corruption. And Kibaki put it very well. When you get into leadership, it's not an opportunity to really get personal well, but it's an honor to serve the others. But let me come to the issue raised about for the first 10 years that funds have been to counties. Interesting, and of course we do understand the history, but there's a nexus from my perspective which is missing. If you look better, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, there's a connection with the counties. Because bottom-up, what is this bottom-up? It's really the counties. In terms of really, that's where the productivity, that's where really it happens. One of the things KIP have done is I don't do any consultants for the counties if you have to. Because either two things happen. If you are going there genuinely, then you'll never be paid. If you get paid, then you are also, there's a kickback. And that's the corruption we're talking about, which we don't want to go with that. It's time even the National Economic Council, from my perspective, need to include some people from the county. Because if we are going to talk about better agenda, the bottom-up transformation economic agenda, then it's only fair that we see representations from the counties. Because as those funds are taken to the counties, then we want to see that bottom up, really in terms of enhancing the productivity in the country. But if you look at corruption, maybe to answer your question, there are countries who have not ways about it. And they have taken it by the bull, that's we take the bull by the horn. And that's something we need to do. If you go to his second, is it first or second country? Rwanda.
Oh, my second home.
He go to his second home.
Yes.
It's very clear if you are in corruption, what will happen to you. The president has been saying that. The former regime has been saying the same. Let's see some action, really. I have very strong views about corruption.
I can see them, they're piling up. They want to speak out. Before they do so, let me just hear from...
you look at countries like Singapore. If you are caught with drugs,
right,
beyond certain grams, you are killed.
The ball on 10 years of devolution, with a light touch, it's good that this meeting is taking place in Eldoret, but the 48th county is forgotten. You know, the diaspora is the 48th county. It should have been there as part of devolution. but I think we are sitting in a good place, the BAL, economically. I am seeing things looking up. Of course, the Mandamanos, the dialogue seems to be taking shape.
Please don't talk about Mandamanos.
Yeah.
Quiet about them.
Well, the fact that there seems to be something happening between the two major antagonizing parties is commendable. The mood seems to be good. I think the harvests in the agricultural areas are coming up well. With this new, with the restoration of this subsidy in fuel prices, I think we could be worse off, right. and we're probably worse off a month or two ago.
We'll come to.
But I attended a meeting, the BAL, the whole week in Mombasa on cooperatives. On this high-level government meeting I was privileged to be part of. And this is why I'm confident. I see things looking up in terms of, although it was focusing on the cooperative sector as a major anchor and driver to the economy, I got to understand a little better the better aspect in terms of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. In terms of things like focusing on productivity, on effectiveness. So the aspects of delivery, I am hoping that the entire government is reading from the same script. I was delighted to know that one of the focus areas, the 5 pillars, one of them being the digital and creative economy. So I think things are looking good. In terms of the statements by Ambassador Meg, she was spot on. Coming from the background of the tech world, there is no doubt the tech world has got great prospect for Kenya. Earlier on, we were discussing with the colleagues where are likely to be the growth areas in the IT world in future. It didn't take me much time to say cybersecurity. I think if we had opportunity to train people to go in that sector, there is a whole need. There's going to be even much more need of let me call them cybernauts or cybersecurity warriors, people that are going to guard the systems. So there is positivity. Again, maybe to borrow from Patrick, he was saying, look, we're going to require, like we have the Askaris, every institution as guards that are securing their facilities. So in terms of tech and in terms of creating jobs, for me, I'm looking up. And the agri-sector, I think even though initially many did chide the thought of giving free fertilizer, but I think we are beginning to reap the fruits. But I must admit, much more needs to be done.
All right, we can discuss the issue of the on-source revenue, but in terms of investment and investing environment, we wanted to compare notes now that at least you have an inkling of what is happening in India there, and we can actually compare notes and see how is India doing it that Kenya needs maybe to up its ante in terms of just creating that conducive environment. One of the things that we've heard from Ambassador Whitman is the fact that we don't have a consistent tax policy in this country. We are always unpredictable. Right now, even we tease out the issue of housing levy. Again, we are being told about it will be from your gross salary. This was something that was not really broached when we're heading actually in the public participation with the finance. But just paint us a picture of what is happening in India, how we can improve here in the country as well.
I think, Debal, let me start by saying that, a lot remains to be done on the side of the tax policy of the country. I wouldn't want to go too deeply into that conversation because I think the optimism that has come out of yesterday's conference is what I would like to take this forward in this show. But just talking specifically about India, there are certain things that they do that I think we certainly could borrow a leaf from. One is that they have a very, very scrupulous savings culture. They have the highest savings per capita ratio in the planet. Secondly, they have a singular focus on the building and the development of institutions. India today is become the third largest economy in the world after overtaking Germany this year, with only the United States and China in front of them. Secondly, they have a singular focus in terms of the development of infrastructure. They've had a very predictable environment for the development of their SMEs. And we have seen that they have developed over 150 unicorns. These are companies that have a value of over $1 billion US. And when we look at any economy, I mean, you must judge the economy by certain aspects like inflation. If we look at our inflation rate in Kenya, it's still quite high at about 8.5% now, compared to 6% 2 years ago. So we need to address the issue of baseline inflation. And we need to also stop this knee-jerk reaction in terms of taxation, whereby we are trying to always plug a hole. I think one of the challenges that we'd like to give to the National Treasury is let's see them also come up with a balanced budget. Because the moment you develop a budget that isn't balanced, then certainly you're going to be looking for a deficit. That also then has a knock-on effect of leading to a very high base lending rate. The base lending rate in Kenya today is north of 10%. Mm-hmm. That in itself crowds out the private sector. Mm-hmm. So, but I would want to suggest that one of the things that as a country we can do now is to really, especially inspiring the capital markets. The president gave a commitment that there would be more listings of state-owned enterprises on the NSE. We would like to see that moving faster. We'd like to see the privatization bill go through parliament at a much more rapid pace. We would like to see companies like Kenya Pipeline, like the water utility companies that have serious challenges from a governance perspective, come to the market, because by being listed on the market, a lot of those governance issues are addressed. We'd also want to see, an environment where, people are taking advantage of the very good prices that are available today. I mean, the market has been on a bear run for a significantly long period of time. Not just the Kenyan market, but many of the markets across the globe. The reason we went to India is because they have gone against the grain, and their market has been on a continuous upswing. And we wanted to learn and find out what it is that is unique about the financial sector there that makes their market so buoyant when the rest of the world is facing challenges. And we are convinced beyond doubts that Kenya can also, start to move in that direction. But there are certain things that must be done. There is a supply side issue. The demand side is very strong. There's a lot of people who would like to buy shares. There's a lot of trading activity. Yesterday, we had very good news because the FTSE Russell Index has actually taken Kenya off the watch list of countries that are difficult to repatriate dollars from. We are waiting for the Morgan Stanley index that will be coming out soon. And, frankly speaking, if you look at the cost of equities today in Kenya, Equity Bank at 40, Safaricom at 15, the NSE at 6, KCB at 28, it's a steal. And I don't understand why our people don't see that and actually start to invest actively and aggressively into these sectors. The finance bill that we have now is developing a huge pension industry. And, obviously, that takes a lot of money off people's disposable income, but it is also forcefully entrenching a savings culture in the country. So we will have much larger pools of money that will allow Kenya in future to be able to solve its financial problems using resources that are generated in the country. I wouldn't want to conclude this, high-level overview of the economy without mentioning the diaspora. The diaspora continues to be a key driver of dollars in this country. They're key participants in the economy, and I'm so glad when I heard the governor of the central bank and our national treasury CS say that they're mooting a dollar-denominated bond. We want to see much more participation by the diaspora in nation building with all the dollars that they bring in. And we also would like to see a lot more proactive policies that allow them, through a single-face interface, to be able to actively participate in our capital markets.
Indeed, indeed. And of course, even when we're talking about savings, we have SASRA, which is warning that even on the housing levy, they will be experiencing a suppressed savings from the people who are members of the SACCOs. So we might be saving on one end through the NSSF or the housing levy, but also in terms of the SACCOs, that particular share of the savings will be actually depreciating. So these are the smooth and the rafts that really comes. Panya na uma huko Vuvia. Yeah, so.
But to pick up from Cape, I think the key.
Before you do so,
yeah.
Can you just allow me to just take a short break right now? I can see it's 8 o'clock on the nose, so we're due for a station break. When we circle back, of course, we pick up with Patrick Obert's sentiments there on savings as well, and what it actually portends for this country if we have a good, conducive savings environment as it is. We shall look also to what is happening in the Capital Markets Authority, where they are working in concert with the Nairobi Security Exchange to make sure that the prices also at the Nairobi Security Exchange are capped at a minimum. Right, we just explore that much later in the course of the program. Don't go away. You're watching Sokoni here on Morning Prime.